I didn't only look at what Amazon did and how it did PR FAQs. I tried to study the science of writing as well to understand why Amazon chose that format, what is the impact. The fact is, writing is a form of thinking, right? So when you're writing something, you activate a part of your brain that enables critical thinking and deep thinking about what you're writing. And when you write something that doesn't sound right, like it's not coherent, you become uncomfortable. So you feel the need to write it better, right? So you start writing about some user problem, and then you come up with a solution, and those things don't match. Your brain comes to you and go like, wait a second, you need to refine this. Like, this story is not good. So the point of writing is really helps you clarify and think through ideas on how to present them. It doesn't matter that English is your second language, or even if English is your first language and you're not a good writer, right? Because the writing that you're doing is not romance writing.
Welcome to the Think Like Amazon podcast. This is your backstage pass into the principles and processes that have powered one of the world's most influential companies. I am Jorge Luis Pando. I'm an 8-year former Amazonian with a passion for helping ambitious professionals grow their careers in a way that's both balanced and sustainable. Each episode, I will talk to leaders to uncover the insights behind their success, and more importantly, how you can apply them to grow your own career. If you're ready to think bigger, move faster, and build a lasting impact, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Think Like Amazon. Here with me is Marcelo Calbucci. I got to know Marcelo recently because, he was a director at Amazon for product and tech. Before that, he started his career at Microsoft, but then he had 18 years of experience in the startup world. He's been a CPO, a CTO, a mentor, an advisor, many different startup roles. But then he joined Amazon as a director after all of this startup career. And he recently left Amazon and he wrote the book on the PRFAQ. For those who don't know this, the PRFAQ stands for Press Release Frequently Asked Questions. And it is, to my personal opinion and many others, it is Amazon's secret sauce for innovation. Well, not so secret anymore that Marcelo wrote the book about it, but it is Amazon's secret sauce for innovation. It is the starting point that we all Amazonians need to do where we want to launch something new. So it starts, the first part of the process is the press release, where we write about it with a date in the future. And then we start the process that's called the working backwards, where we start working backwards from that press release and frequently asked questions, right? But who am I to explain this? And that's why we have here the expert with us. So Marcelo, thanks for joining us. I would like to kick things off by you telling us what actually inspired you to write this book.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. As you said, I spent 18 years working in many startups. I founded many startups. And when you're doing startup, the early stages is really like describing the innovation, describing the strategy, the vision. And I never found a good tool to do that. I have used many ones. I use business model canvas, business plans, all kinds of pitch decks that you use. Then when I joined Amazon and I was exposed to the PR FAQ, I have heard about it before, but I never really use it. As you probably imagine, when you're not on Amazon, you don't see a lot of those. So I really didn't know what to expect. When I joined and I started learning about PRFAQ, it suddenly clicked to me that this would be a very powerful tool for startup founders, product managers, executives, innovators outside of Amazon, because there was nothing like it. And it was so valuable that when I left, I decided to write the book.
It's so incredible. Definitely. It was one of those culture shocks. I used to come from an environment where we prepared PowerPoint presentations, right? And I think it's kind of like a meme out there in the world, like Jeff Bezos hates PowerPoint or whatever, it's headlines everywhere. And one of the first things that people ask me when I say that I had an 8-year career at Amazon is like, hey, how do you do with the writing? Especially English is my second language. I believe English is your second language as well, right, Marcelo?
Yes.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit more. I know a lot of listeners have English as a second language. They get terrified because speaking, especially us Latin Americans, we can get through pretty easily with like words, speaking, but writing terrified me at the beginning. What would you say is the difference, the main difference for everybody there in a PowerPoint culture environment? What do you think is the main difference between like having to write things down and actually just creating a PowerPoint deck?
Yeah, for me to write the book, I didn't only look at what Amazon did and how it did PRFAQs. I tried to study the science of writing as well to understand why Amazon chose that format, what is the impact. The fact is, writing is a form of thinking, right? So when you're writing something, you activate a part of your brain that enables critical thinking and deep thinking about what you're writing. And when you write something that doesn't sound right, like it's not coherent, you become uncomfortable. So you feel the need to write it better, right? So you start writing about some user problem, and then you come up with a solution, and those things don't match. Your brain comes to you and go like, wait a second, you need to refine this. Like, this story is not good. So the point of writing is really helps you clarify and think through ideas on how to present them. It doesn't matter that English is your second language, or even if English is your first language and you're not a good writer, right? Because the writing that you're doing is not romance writing. You're not trying to do creative writing. You're doing a type of writing that I call precise writing. It's very practical. You should deliver information and to have the right balance of data and story. Sometimes people over-index in one or the other. You see technical people over-indexing on data, and sometimes you see people over-indexing on story, like feels like marketing and sales, and you want to have the right balance of that in any type of business writing, really. It's not only PRFAQ.
So interesting. And I had the fortune of my first manager at Amazon was a training of the course, like Amazon business writing or writing like an Amazon. I don't remember the name of the actual course, but she was a trainer of the course, and she told me, because I started sharing all of my imposter syndrome, like I don't know how to write and whatever. And she was like, just think about the page as real estate. It's 100% of your pie, let's say. What do you want? You just talked about this in the intro. Do you want the intro to be 50% of your pie? Like, does that really make sense to you? So I'm a very analytical person. So I started thinking about this almost as kind of like a building or something that I needed to put together. Does it really make sense for the first floor to be 30% of the total building? No, it's not. So I started kind of like seeing it that way. And from that moment on, it started kind of like being like filling in the blanks almost. And to your point about data, yeah, there's room for data. And there's also room for like people to feel like the pain points that you're transmitting are cringy. That's one of the feedbacks that I got is like, one director once told me, I want to cringe when I read your pain points. Yes. And then for it to be also your PRFAQ to be envisioning and inspirational, right? For you to be thinking big, that is one of Amazon's big leadership principles, right?
Yes, that's one of the main points I make in the book. Like, the problem is probably the most important aspect of a PRFAQ, right? You really need to nail the problem. You need people to read it and really understand and really know if it is a big or a small problem, urgent or not urgent, severe or not severe. So you really want to nail the problem more than the solution. Because once you have a problem, you have an opportunity or a challenge that is worth solving. And then you can come up with different solutions for that.
That's interesting. The solution can change, but the problem, I guess, is what everybody in the room should be agreeing to, I guess?
Yeah, or not, right? Or you realize the problem is not as big as we thought it was. So this is not an opportunity worth pursuing. That's one of the benefits of the PRFAQ. It helps you understand if that's something you should do or not, right? If 100% of your PRFAQs are becoming product, you're probably not doing it right. There is a percentage of PRFAQs that gonna lead to dead ends. To say like, well, it wasn't what we expected. It's not as big or as urgent, or the problem is gonna go away next year, whatever that is. But the process of writing and discovery was critical to understand that it wasn't as important. Compare that with the other style, which is like you put a PowerPoint that no one can understand because it's not very clear. And then you start to build it and you jump into building. And like when you release the product or the feature or the program, then suddenly it doesn't work. It doesn't address the problem or it doesn't resonate with the market. So you're lost in that situation and you wasted 6 months, 12 months of, the team's resources.
PRFAQs do take time to write. So a lot of people have this bias, I guess, of like, no, I'm putting so many dozens of hours into writing this. It needs to be a goal, right? But correct me if I'm wrong, and trying to understand what you're saying is, yes, you put in probably dozens of hours to write this document, but you're saving the team hundreds of hours. So even if it's a no-go, your effort is also valuable because you just saved us so much time as a team, right?
Yeah, so there is a great quote from Jeff Bezos that speaks to that, which is like move slow so you can move fast. And when you add up, the total length of a project become shorter when you have a PRFAQ. And in ways that you might not realize, because when you don't have a PRFAQ to start, which describe the vision and the strategy of a new project, what happens is that a lot of people interpret things differently. And you start having a lot of misalignments, a lot of meetings, a lot of messages back and forth. So you start feeling the pain later on. And if you don't realize what happened, that the team is so misaligned. Well, what happened is like you didn't discuss strategy and vision early on. Like you probably didn't have a PRFAQ. So that's an example of like you move slow in the beginning, and it's not that slow, to be honest. It's just like you're talking about weeks here so that you can move fast later.
That's really interesting. Is that mindset of like looking at things zoomed in, looking at the tree versus looking at the forest, I guess. I'm curious. I mean, you come up from the startup world. You started this conversation by saying that you tried other tools. This one is the framework that actually stuck, really kicked things off for you. I want to understand, like for the listeners who, let's say, are used to presentations, adopting this writing-centric approach can be a huge shift. So what advice do you have for leaders who are looking to implement the PRFAQ framework itself or just writing a centric approach itself?
Yeah, I hear that a lot. But the reality is people are already doing a lot of writing. Like they do writing on emails, they write Slack messages. All that is a type of business writing. So all that you're doing, you're being intentional of converting that type of writing to also how you make decisions on your organization, right? Like how you write PRFAQs instead of doing PowerPoints. So you're already doing some of that. And, for the people that are challenging, like, whoa, PowerPoint is better, like we can do this kind of stuff. Let me give an example here. Like imagine that you're writing an email to someone and you're trying to discover a problem or explain a solution, and halfway through writing that email, you realize, oh, no, that's not what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is something else. So you go and you erase that email and you start over, right? With like a simpler or different explanation of what you're saying. That is an example of writing helping you think, right? So the PRFAQ is the same thing. When you do in PowerPoint, you do not have that. You do not have an opportunity to challenge yourself, to go into that discomfort zone of your brain because you can't find the clarity on the story. You write a PowerPoint in 2 hours, and you're going to create a 20 slide that seem reasonable, seem cohesive, but they are not. They're just bullet points. They're shallow. They don't connect the dots. And what happens is when you present that to the team might even feel like they understood, but then they leave the room and each one of them have a slightly different representation of what happened, an interpretation of the vision. And when execution starts, everything breaks down. So when people say like, well, we want to adopt a culture of writing, you're already doing it. All they need is to apply that to project decisions. When you talk about vision and strategy. And you don't have to start all at once. It doesn't have to be Amazon, like the Bezos came down and said, like, this is how we do it now. It could be start with a small project, like understand what works on your culture, in your organization's culture. Take the lessons of the first trial, do one more time. The first time is not going to be great. The second time probably is not going to be great. By the third or fourth time, you'll learn how to do this the right way.
For the listeners who haven't worked at Amazon, and this is kind of like an intimidating sort of like first experience as an Amazonian, but at Amazon, especially when you're reviewing documents like a PRFAQ, for instance, you join a meeting room, you grab a piece of paper that's usually, or back in the day before COVID, it was printed. I don't know how they're doing it nowadays, that they went back to the office. I don't know if they went back to printing it out. The owner of the document would print copies, have them there, have pen there for you to write. You grab a pen, you grab a piece of paper, and you start reading for the first 20 minutes, sometimes even a little bit more, right? So it's a meeting. Let's imagine a 1-hour meeting where everybody's silent and reading for the first 20-ish minutes. I even say it out loud and it feels intimidating, right? So that's the experience that usually people think when it's Amazon. Back to my original question about adopting data, you said like, yeah, you're doing it the first time, then the second time, then the third time. Maybe doing it like the textbook version of how Amazon has it today might be intimidating to some folks, right? Do you have some thoughts regarding that? Like how to maybe that's the end goal, is to have very effective meetings where 1 hour is 20 minutes, everybody in silence just reading. How do you get to that point? Or do you have a point of view on how you can actually accomplish that in the long run by taking smaller steps in the short run?
Yeah, it's definitely awkward. Like you mentioned, like the silent reading in the beginning of meetings is so strange. When I joined Amazon and like the first few meetings that I was in, and like everyone was in silence for 20 minutes. And I joined during COVID era. So I was working from home at that time. And like we were reading a digital version of the document, and everyone had their camera off and reading the document and understanding. But what you realize is that when the meeting starts, everyone is on the same page. And I don't mean that as a pun, I mean like everyone read the document and they have the context of what this meeting is going to be about. The different stage is when you have a PowerPoint or a meeting without PowerPoint or document, and people come to the meeting and start debating something, and then someone asks a question that it was an object question that was answered in the previous meeting, but they forgot or they weren't there. So there is so much of meeting time that is wasted just bringing people up to speed. So this silent reading in the beginning is so powerful because what follows is very deep conversations about what's important, right? You're not trying to level up everyone so the conversation can happen.
Your recommendation would still be, hey, take a few minutes to read in silence. Would you do it before the meeting, during the meeting?
I would say that the way Amazon approached this is the right one. Block sometime. If it is just a 1-page document, it's 5 minutes. If it is a 6-page document, it's 20 to 25 minutes. Block the time in the meeting. It's going to be worth it for people to read and be on the same page. And the expectation is people should really read it, not scan the document, like not skim it just, right? And I think it's awkward just like the first 2-3 times that you do it. Then you just get used to it, right? Like any change feels strange in the beginning, but you get used to it.
That's a very important point. And you mentioned that you joined Amazon during COVID, and maybe this is a slight detour from our PRFAQ conversation, but you did transition from, correct me if I'm wrong, 18 years working at startups. Some people refer to Amazon as the world's largest startup, right? It's a very decentralized environment. We have this concept of 2 pizza teams. There are teams that technically can be fed with 2 pizzas. And these are American pizzas, by the way. Some Italians have a really hard time understanding the concept of 2 pizzas. But yeah, it's 2 American Domino's pizzas. So yeah, Amazon is the world's largest, or referred to sometimes as the world's largest startup. You have vast experience in the startup world, then join Amazon. In your experience, how accurate is this statement?
Yeah, I heard it a lot, even before I joined Amazon. Like recruiters love to use that line for new employees. I would say Amazon is not a startup and it doesn't operate like a startup. It's very different. However, among the big companies, if you think Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, I think Amazon has a very interesting approach to innovation, right? Like you mentioned, decentralized. And really, like teams can come up with their own product and ideas in business and go and execute on it to see if it's going to work or not. As long as you have a PRFAQ that tells a good story that feels like resonates with the company, then you get the green light and you can go ahead and execute. So there is some of that element. The other thing that is quite different is Amazon has a lot of resources. Like there is a lot of people, there is a lot of support, there is a lot of infrastructure that supports on the execution. Startups usually don't have that level of support. They are way more scrappier. The frugal aspect is somewhat equal on both sides. Amazon is very frugal, as you know. Startups tend to be frugal as well by necessity. So that is similar as well.
So scrappy, but not as scrappy as people who have never been in a startup actually think, or it actually could be. But within the big tech, the Magnificent Seven or whatever name is up to these days, it is kind of like one of the most startup-y, I guess.
Yeah, I think the difference really is in startups, you're responsible for a lot of a small pie. At Amazon, you're responsible for very little from a very big pie, right? So the impact that you're going to have might touch 100 million people or like 1 billion people, while at a startup, you might be doing something that only reaches 1 million users or customers, but you're responsible for a much larger portion of it. So it's different styles.
Great. And you joined Amazon as a director and during COVID. And then in just a few number of years, you managed to gain so much expertise on one of Amazon's 4 frameworks that you then managed to write a book about it. a lot of people, a lot of our listeners are aspiring to join Amazon at some point or just fairly recently joined Amazon. How would you recommend that they hit the ground running? Like, it can be a very overwhelming experience, like drinking from a fire hose type of experience. You managed to sort of like become the expert at one of the like Amazon's core frameworks. Do you have any recommendations of how people can start their Amazon experience successfully?
Yeah, I think there is like two things that you can do, like if you're just joining Amazon. One is Amazon has a lot of internal resources. Like you mentioned early on, like there are trainings, there are websites, and there are mentors that can help you better understand how to write not only PRFAQs, but also COEs and WBRs and all kinds of documents that Amazon uses. It's worth mentioning that PRFAQ is one of maybe a dozen frameworks that Amazon uses to run its business, from, like correction of error, which is looking at the past and how can we improve the future, to weekly business review, which is about the state of the business right now, to PRFAQ, which is about, what we should do in the future. So there's a lot of resources online for employees. Some resources are even available online for everyone to use, including my book, right? The second aspect is applies to everything that you're trying to learn, which is practice, right? And writing helps you write better. And writing on the Amazon style, which is precise writing, helps you write better on that style as well. So I recommend for anyone who's joining Amazon to get their hands dirty and start writing. Even if you start just with a paragraph or a one-pager for all your meetings, right? And then get the feedback. Be very open to feedback, right? You want to know how can you improve your writing? How can you make it more clear, more succinct? From there, you're going to gain the experience that give you the comfort to write your own PRFAQs. And one of the things at Amazon that is very valuable to mention as well, Jorge, is you don't need permission to write a PRFAQ, right? You can just write your own PRFAQ. You have an idea on how to improve a feature or how to change a program or how to launch something new, write it. Write it down and then talk with your peers, talk with other people that you know at Amazon, talk with your manager, ask them to review the document. Even if it goes nowhere, it's such a valuable lesson on how to navigate the Amazon experience.
It's so interesting that you mentioned this, because I do think that everybody who works at Amazon should live that experience of writing a PRFAQ. And I have so many people reach out to me, friends, coachees, mentees, whatever, and they're like, I just cannot seem to get the time to do it. Nobody's asking me to do one. I'm swamped with work. I cannot get to do one. I've been at Amazon for years and I haven't written a PRFAQ.
Yeah.
You just said just do it, kind of slogan, but any specific recommendation for this, a type of listener who is at Amazon for years and haven't written one?
I do. I think what people make the mistake to approach this problem is they need to have clarity before they start writing. And it's the other way around. It's the writing that brings clarity. So the reason people keep procrastinating is I need to think more about the solution. I need to think more about the problem, the customer, what else is out there. So once I figure that out, then I'll start writing. And to them, I say no. You're doing backwards. What you really need to do is start writing first. And then you're going to find gaps in your knowledge and understanding, which is going to tell you which information you need to learn so that you can continue your writing. So as you write, you find the gaps. You pause, you go find the information, and you continue writing. The second aspect is there are certain things in a PRFAQ that are facts, and there are certain things in a PRFAQ that are assumptions and a hypothesis, right? Customer problem is a fact. It exists regardless of your feelings or your ideas or your suggestions. It just exists. So it's much easier when you start from facts, discovering things about the customer, about the market, about existing solutions, about the state of the world, regulations, whatever. Those are facts. They are easier to understand and to discover and to put in the document. People also get stuck when they need to, kick in that creative side of the brain. So they have to ideate solutions and think about how to solve that problem. So if you leave that for later, sometimes the solutions just come to you, right? And you should not limit yourself to one solution. You might find 3, 4, 5 solutions. With AI, you can have a buddy that you exchange ideas and think like, what are 3 or 4 ways that I could solve this problem? And you look at that and you think, oh, these are like 2 very interesting ways. So I'm going to use that on my PR FAQ, including one that is my recommendation. So if you do it like that, the flow becomes more natural. You procrastinate less in the process of writing.
Some people feel short of writing a peer FAQ. I think it's because sometimes it's like this huge monster that they need to tackle, right, and conquer, and they don't feel ready. But also because they don't have the time, but then also because they don't feel ready. But to paraphrase a little bit what you're saying is anybody listening to this could just sit down and write in a piece of paper, this is the customer that I'm serving, whether it's external or internal to the company. These are the main pain points that I've seen in my time here. You can even be new to the company and people would appreciate having a fresh set of eyes to these problems, right? So you just start circulating that, I guess, and I'm making it up as I'm going. So please feel free to correct what I'm saying. Just writing down that doesn't require creativity, doesn't require being an expert on something. It just requires having done this for so many times that you start seeing patterns and you state the facts. So if you just do that, which anybody can do, and start circulating that and start getting traction on that, then that could lead to you writing a peer FAQ. But it's not the peer FAQ that's the ultimate goal and that could take dozens of hours. This is something that you can write in under an hour, let's say.
Yeah, that's right. And as you write this, you're going to also challenge yourself on some of the things that you're saying. Let's say, you're right, like most users don't like to do things this way. And then you challenge yourself and say, like, is it true? Like, is it most? Let me see if I can find the data about that, right? And then you realize, oh, it's 37%. So it's not most, but it's enough. 37% might be, enough to say, like, it's a problem worth solving. So that discovery process, that problem discovery, that existing solution discovery is very valuable for you to think about, is this opportunity worth continuing or not? Let's say that you discover is only 7% of users that struggle with certain things. You might like, this is quite small compared to other problems that we have to solve. So you might pause that one short and continue with other opportunities. The other thing, Jorge, is I tell people you can write a PRFAQ for anything. Like if you have a personal project that you want to do, like you want to open a small business, you want to launch a podcast, you want to write a book, you can write a PRFAQ about that. I wrote a PRFAQ about my book. I was like, who is the customer for this book? What problem are they trying to solve? How are they solving today? What is my solution? What is going to be my differentiation? Like how I'm going to price the book? Like all those elements were part of my book PRFAQ, if you will. So if you don't find the Amazon thing that you want to do, you can do a side project one.
So interesting that you mentioned that. I did exactly the same thing. I left Amazon, I started creating content, and it all felt really scattered. So I said, no, I need to sit down and write a peer FAQ. Like, who am I serving? Why? What is this for? And I did exactly that, and I wrote it. And then I took an additional step that I never took at Amazon because, well, technically it's not allowed, but the tool didn't even exist when I was, or wasn't popular when I was at Amazon, but I uploaded it to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And what happened was I uploaded like basically a 6-page document to ChatGPT that essentially made ChatGPT my sounding board or like my co-founder to some degree. Because now every time I had a question, every time I had like a doubt, I would just go to that custom GPT, start asking questions, and ChatGPT would answer things like, well, but you said that your customer is actually this. Why are you doing that? And I was like, wow, you're right. But it's basically you giving me feedback out of my own writing, basically, or holding myself accountable, which I think is amazing. But to your point, that process of sitting down and just writing it definitely clarifies a lot of thoughts. It makes you wonder or think about why you're doing things while you're writing them instead of just thinking them, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I love that you did that. I think that's a very good use of AI, right? What is not a good use of AI, at least in the context of PRFAQ, is to ask AI to write the PRFAQ for you. Because then the AI is doing the thinking and you're not really engage in that critical thinking and deep thinking, right? I also built a custom GPT for the book. So anyone can go to the PRFAQ custom GPT and you can find the link on the book website at the footer of the book website and upload their PRFAQ and say, critique this document, right? Let me know what you think as an executive or as a product manager, like what I didn't understand or what did I get wrong? And I think LLMs are excellent at providing critique, right? They not only gonna observe mistakes in grammar and English and tone and all the stuff, which is good, although we have Grammarly and other tools that you can use for that as well. But it also gonna find like coherence problems and say like, wait a second, you said this on this paragraph, but you said that on that paragraph. These two things don't go together, right? And you go like, oh, it's true. Like I need to clarify. Or even simple things like you go from one sentence to another, and ChatGPT once told me like it's not clear the connection between these two things, right? So for me, it was like, oh, it's obviously my brain, but ChatGPT is right. Like there is a missing connector here that I forgot to write about.
And yeah, the way that you're describing it is also, it's almost like a ChatGPT is your first filter, right? Catching all of the low-hanging fruits and things and nuances that you wouldn't want to have been discovered in like a meeting with 20 people, right? So that's a good use of AI. What else? We're talking about new products here. So I'm launching a new business. You launched a new book, a new press release for a new product in the future that hasn't been invented yet. What else can the PRFAQ be used for besides new products?
Yeah, I think a PRFAQ is really a document for any time you want to create or change something. And I use the word something very broadly. It can be a product, it can be a business, it can be a program, or even a process or a company policy. So imagine that you're changing, your organization handle user customer feedback, right? Which is a process of how to do that. So you think there is a more efficient way of doing it or a way that is going to deliver better results. You can write a PRFAQ about that. It's going to sound awkward to write a press release that is about the change of a process. But once you get past that concern, you're like, oh yeah, the format works. The format really works for that. And you have to remember the press release is not to be sent to the press. It's not a marketing tool. It's just a way to position a vision of the future.
Once worked in an internal team, and it didn't make sense for us to launch information that would never make it to the press. Our VP told us, I want all of the PRFAQs, instead of a PR, like a press release, I want it to be launch announcement emails, but to follow the same process. And the awkwardness just evaporated. Like once you frame it as a launch announcement email in the future, it made total sense. So that could be another solution for it. And then as you were mentioning, sorry, go ahead.
No, I include that in the book as well. I say like there is a few things that you can replace the press release. The announcement email is one of them. Company blog is another one of them. Many companies have internal blogs for employees, right? So you could use that format as well, or even social media posts, right? And it's kind of awkward, but like you can do that as well if you prefer not to use the press release. Although I really like the press release format because the 7 paragraphs are so good at describing, the problem, the solution, the customer pain point, what is going to be great about it, how to get started. Like those are so powerful.
Well, a PRFAQ for new things, a PRFAQ for changing things. I once read when I was at Amazon, an article in Inside Amazon from a director. Her name's Kelly Wenzel, in case anybody here is at Amazon and wants to search for it internally. But she wrote how to write a PRFAQ for your career, which I found surprising. And I wrote one for my career. And the moment that I started writing, I worked in product management. But the more that I started writing, the more that I started thinking, you know what? This productivity thing and effectiveness thing is kind of like my edge. Like I write about this and I'm one more product manager, a good product manager, but there's so many. But this thing is kind of like my angle. So it quickly started becoming, as I was writing it down and clearing my thoughts to your point of view, I thought about all of these things, but on paper, it kind of like feels like this is my edge and I should double in down on this. And that's exactly what I did since 2017 after writing this. I guess that's another thing that the listeners can take from this is like, you can write a PRFAQ even about yourself, because to some extent we are a product at the end of the day. But
yeah, you can write how you're going to improve yourself, right? And what problems you have today and like how you're going to achieve that both personally and professionally.
I take so many nuggets. I've been writing them down. At the bottom of this podcast, I'll include some of the links, the link to your book, the link to where they can get the AI. I will include some notes as well on social media in case you want to catch that. Yeah, writing things down. I think, the PRFAQ as a whole does deserve a book. So thank you very much for writing that. Any of our listeners who is at Amazon haven't written one, please go ahead and try this approach of kind of like starting with the who's your customer and what are the pain points. And for those of you who aren't at Amazon or left or aren't there yet, you can actually adopt this PRFAQ framework for your business as well. Writing things down, whatever the tool is, but writing things down, I think is one of the most powerful exercises that anybody can do. Marcelo, thank you very much. Do you want to share any more about your book, where people can get it? Last parting words?
Yeah, no surprise. People can get the book on Amazon, but I also have a lot of resources online, including examples, templates, lots of articles that I wrote about PRFAQ. And you just go to the book website. The easiest way is to go to Google and search for PRFAQ book, and we're going to be the #1 result there.
It's amazing, Marcelo. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you have a good weekend.
Take care.